Moments ago, Britain was thrown into political chaos as a shocking royal dossier, reportedly compiled by Prince William himself, sent shockwaves through Westminster. Sources claim the secret file contained evidence so explosive that it forced Prime Minister Keir Starmer to the brink of resignation. Tonight, questions echo across the nation. What exactly was in William's dossier, and has the balance of power in Britain just shifted forever? It began quietly, just after midnight, when a handful of late-night reporters in Westminster received an encrypted document from an anonymous royal source. Within minutes, whispers started spreading across newsroom chat rooms and encrypted message boards. The file was labeled, William's Dossier, Confidential Eyes Only. No one knew what it contained, but the name alone was enough to set Britain's political establishment on fire. By dawn, the corridors of power in London were vibrating with tension. Security vehicles surrounded Downing Street. Phones rang unanswered inside the Palace of Westminster. Senior aides were seen rushing through side entrances, clutching folders and refusing to speak to the press. Something had detonated inside the heart of government, and at the center of it stood the heir to the throne, Prince William. According to initial leaks, the dossier wasn't a random collection of papers. It was a meticulously organized archive of private communications, constitutional notes and personal letters exchanged between senior officials and members of the royal household. Palace insiders claim it exposed deep fractures in the relationship between the monarchy and the Starmer administration, fractures that could no longer be ignored. Journalists, who caught sight of the first few pages, described the tone as alarming, urgent, and unlike anything written by a royal figure in modern history. One political editor said it read more like a national security briefing than a royal memo. Another compared it to a constitutional bombshell, warning that its release could threaten the delicate balance between Crown and Parliament. Within hours, television networks broke into live coverage. Reporters stationed outside Buckingham Palace spoke in hushed tones, careful not to speculate but visibly shaken by the unfolding situation. Anchors repeated the same phrase over and over again. A secret royal document, authored by Prince William, now in the hands of top government officials. Behind closed doors, chaos took hold. Senior ministers demanded immediate clarification from the palace, while opposition parties called for Starmer to release a statement. Yet from the Prime Minister's office, only silence. Insiders described the mood inside Downing Street as cold panic. Staff were reportedly ordered to turn in personal phones, and private meetings stretched long into the night. Meanwhile, palace aides refused to confirm or deny the dossier's authenticity. But sources close to Prince William quietly suggested that the document had been prepared weeks earlier, a contingency record outlining repeated violations of constitutional convention by Starmer's government. If true, it meant the heir to the throne had not only been watching, he had been documenting, preparing, and waiting for the exact moment to act. By mid-morning, Westminster was effectively on lockdown. Police cordoned off the area as dozens of news vans parked outside Parliament Square. Helicopters circled overhead, broadcasting live shots of the nation's power center in crisis. The Prime Minister's motorcade was seen arriving through a back entrance. No waving, no press, just a tense, silent arrival that told the world something had gone terribly wrong. Across the country, Britons woke up to headlines screaming, "Royal dossier shocks Westminster." Social media erupted with theories, some claiming it contained evidence of corruption, others suggesting it exposed secret negotiations with foreign leaders without royal approval. The hashtag William Dossier began trending globally within an hour. Inside the palace, a different kind of silence ruled. Senior courtiers were seen entering the king's private wing, but no official statement emerged. The royal household's press office issued only a single line. His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales has no further comment at this time. For journalists, that sentence said everything and nothing. By noon, Britain stood frozen in suspense. No one knew who had leaked the document, how far its reach extended, or what Starmer's next move would be. But one fact was beyond dispute: a line had been crossed. Never in recent memory had a royal figure, especially the future king, been tied to an internal document powerful enough to shake the very core of government. And yet that's exactly what had happened. The heir to the throne had acted. The Prime Minister was cornered. The system that once seemed untouchable was now cracking under the weight of royal intervention. As one political insider whispered to the BBC off record, "This isn't just politics anymore. This is history unfolding, live." As fragments of William's secret dossier began leaking across Westminster, the nation entered a new phase of shock. For the first time in living memory, the heir to the British throne was linked to a document accusing a sitting prime minister of constitutional betrayal. What had once been dismissed as rumor now stood backed by evidence. Evidence that, according to senior insiders, was impossible to ignore. The document reportedly ran over 40 pages, meticulously formatted, time-stamped, and footnoted with cross-references to royal correspondence and parliamentary records. Each section carried the quiet weight of authority, not speculation, but documentation. Insiders claimed it contained copies of private memos, transcripts of advisory meetings, and even redacted foreign communication summaries. At its core, the dossier accused Keir Starmer's administration of systematically bypassing several unwritten constitutional customs that defined Britain's democracy. It detailed how ministerial directives were allegedly pushed through without consultation from the Crown, and how certain policies were enacted despite explicit warnings from the Privy Council. One section, reportedly titled Foreign Coordination and Domestic Silence, hinted at unauthorized exchanges between Starmer's team and foreign envoys, interactions that may have excluded both the Foreign Office and the Palace from oversight. Another portion, marked Royal Correspondence, ignored, described at least 3 written advisories from senior royal legal advisors that were acknowledged but unacted upon. Palace officials refused to clarify the details, but the tone of the leaks painted a grave picture, that the government had deliberately operated in the shadows of its own constitution, marginalizing the monarchy's advisory role in critical national matters. For a country whose identity was built on the balance between royal symbolism and political autonomy, this revelation was nothing short of explosive. By mid-morning, snippets of the dossier began appearing in political chat groups and journalist circles. Screenshots, redacted pages, and blurred PDF files made their way online. Though authenticity couldn't be verified, the language used felt unmistakably official, formal, precise, and urgent. Phrases like breach of consultative precedent and intentional disregard for royal advisory correspondence appeared repeatedly. One section described internal warnings from the Ministry of Defense concerning a controversial foreign security deal, a deal allegedly greenlit without the palace's constitutional review. The dossier claimed these warnings were filed but suppressed. Another memo referred to the risk of domestic instability if the public learned of the decisions being made behind closed doors. As the leaks grew, Parliament trembled. A senior MP from the opposition was quoted saying, "This is the most serious royal intervention in modern political history." Another called it a constitutional earthquake. Even Starmer's closest allies began distancing themselves, describing the revelations as concerning and worthy of urgent examination. News anchors across Britain struggled to maintain composure. Was this truly Prince William's work? Had the palace sanctioned it, or had the heir acted on his own? Theories clashed. Some claimed the dossier was part of a quiet power play, a warning from the future monarch to restore respect for royal convention. Others believed it was an act of desperation, a royal whistleblowing effort to prevent deeper corruption from taking hold. Behind the cameras, sources described panic inside Downing Street. Legal advisors pored over constitutional documents, searching for counter-arguments. Ministers reportedly argued over how to respond, to deny or to delay. Every option looked catastrophic. A direct rebuttal could imply the dossier was real. Silence could confirm it by omission. Meanwhile, the palace continued its quiet stance. No statements, no leaks, only an image of Prince William leaving a late-night briefing at Clarence House, his expression tense, unreadable. The photo spread like wildfire, captioned with speculation, "The prince who spoke without speaking." In pubs, on trains, and across social media, ordinary Britons debated the unthinkable. Could the monarchy truly be challenging the government? Was this the beginning of a constitutional reset, or the end of the fragile truce that had kept Crown and Parliament aligned for centuries? By evening, even international outlets had joined the frenzy. American and European media reported it as Britain's most severe internal confrontation Since the abdication crisis, the world watched as a modern democracy wrestled with ancient power, and in the center of it all stood two figures, one bound by royal duty, the other by political ambition, locked. By sunrise, Westminster had become a pressure cooker. Inside the House of Commons, the mood was electric, a mixture of disbelief, fury, and fear. MPs flooded into emergency meetings as whispers of the royal dossier dominated every hallway conversation. The Speaker of the House ordered a rare emergency session, declaring the situation a matter of national constitutional concern. From the first gavel strike, chaos reigned. Opposition leaders demanded immediate disclosure of the document and a televised investigation. Tory benches thundered with calls for accountability, while Labour ministers struggled to maintain composure. "The people deserve to know if the Prime Minister has violated the Crown," one MP shouted, igniting an uproar that forced the Speaker to suspend debate twice in a single hour. Behind closed doors, the atmosphere inside Downing Street was even worse. According to insiders, senior advisors urged Starmer to consider temporary resignation to preserve institutional stability. It was a desperate calculation: step aside voluntarily or risk being forced out under royal pressure. One aide reportedly described the Prime Minister as white as paper during the meeting, pacing back and forth as news of protests outside began flooding in. On the streets of London, crowds gathered faster than police could contain them. Thousands filled Whitehall and Parliament Square, waving handwritten signs that read, "We want the truth and protect the Crown." The chants echoed off government buildings, raw, angry, and relentless. Security barriers were doubled. Armed police took positions near the gates of Downing Street as intelligence warned of planned marches converging from multiple directions. Broadcast vans lined every corner. News anchors spoke live from rain-soaked sidewalks, their voices nearly drowned by the chanting behind them. Some protesters called for Starmer's immediate resignation. Others simply demanded transparency, a full public release of the royal dossier. Across the country, cities like Manchester, Birmingham, and Glasgow saw smaller but equally tense demonstrations. Inside the palace, silence persisted. But that silence spoke volumes. Each hour without denial deepened the belief that the dossier was genuine, and that the monarchy was quietly standing by its future king. Senior MPs interpreted the palace's restraint as approval by omission, a subtle but unmistakable signal that Starmer's authority was crumbling. By late afternoon, the government appeared fractured. Ministers canceled media appearances. Rumors of a cabinet split began surfacing, suggesting several high-ranking officials were ready to resign if Starmer refused to step down. One political correspondent described the moment perfectly. "It's not just a crisis anymore. It's a countdown." As night fell, floodlights illuminated the face of Downing Street. Behind those black doors, the Prime Minister was said to be in emergency talks with legal counsel and military advisors, trying to determine whether the king himself would intervene next. The crowd outside roared louder, the sound of a nation demanding answers. And for the first time in his career, Keir Starmer had none to give. As the chaos unfolds across Westminster, Buckingham Palace maintains a stony, calculated silence. No press statements, no official denials, just an eerie calm radiating from behind the gilded gates. But insiders know that silence from the palace rarely means inaction. Behind those ancient walls, the air is thick with quiet tension. Courtiers have reportedly been instructed to prepare for constitutional contingencies, a phrase that sends shivers through those who understand the gravity of royal language. Sources close to Prince William reveal that he has been deeply concerned for weeks, particularly over what he perceives as Starmer's disregard for long-standing conventions that define Britain's delicate balance between monarchy and government. Advisors describe William as measured but firm, someone who doesn't act impulsively, which makes his recent moves all the more significant. His private correspondence, once dismissed as routine, now appears to have been part of a deliberate and strategic campaign to draw attention to what he sees as a constitutional drift. But the most electrifying whisper comes from a closed-door meeting at Clarence House, a rare and lengthy 2-hour discussion between King Charles and Prince William. No aides, no secretaries, no transcripts. What was said inside remains unknown, but royal correspondents insist the tone was grave and decisive. Some claim the king has privately endorsed his son's concern. while others believe Charles is torn, balancing his role as monarch with the need to preserve national unity. Outside, reporters stake out every royal residence, desperate for even a glance of movement through the iron gates. Inside, the royal family knows that one wrong statement could ignite a constitutional wildfire, and yet, according to a senior palace insider, a message is already circulating quietly through political circles, a message that hints at royal resolve. The whispered phrase, now repeating through Westminster like a ghostly echo, is simple but chilling. If the government will not defend the crown will defend itself. That single line, never confirmed, never denied, sends tremors through the establishment. The silence of the palace has become its loudest weapon, and the question hanging over the nation tonight is whether that silence is about to break. As dawn breaks over Westminster, the air feels unnaturally heavy, the kind of silence that follows only after something irreversible. Social media explodes with screenshots of what appears to be Prime Minister Keir Starmer's resignation letter, allegedly leaked through an anonymous source. The document, written in his characteristic blunt tone, cites unbearable constitutional pressure and a loss of public trust. Yet within minutes, government spokespeople call it a fabrication, claiming the Prime Minister remains fully in control. The denials, however, do little to calm the storm. The country can sense it. Something inside the machinery of power has broken. Across the UK, from London to Leeds, the public divides sharply. On one side stand those demanding radical transparency and reform, insisting that the monarchy's involvement in modern governance must finally be addressed. On the other side, a growing chorus argues that Prince William's intervention, though controversial, was necessary to preserve national integrity in a time of crisis. Talk radio crackles with fury and admiration in equal measure. "He's the only one brave enough to stand up to them," one caller declares. Another shouts back, "He's overstepped every boundary we have left." The nation seems to be having two conversations at once, one about democracy, the other about destiny. Parliament remains paralyzed. With Starmer's leadership in question and the opposition demanding immediate elections, no one is certain who holds real power. Temporary ministers shuffle between emergency meetings, desperately trying to project stability, while the palace continues to observe its chilling silence. Political analysts flood the airwaves, warning that this could mark the beginning of a new constitutional era, a moment when centuries of unwritten rules are being rewritten in real time. Some even speculate that the monarchy, once seen purely as a ceremonial symbol, may be repositioning itself as a moral counterweight to political corruption. Inside Downing Street, aides reportedly pack boxes. Security officers have been spotted moving classified documents to undisclosed locations. A growing sense of inevitability grips the corridors of power, that whether Starmer resigns or not, the balance of authority has already shifted. Britain, for the first time in living memory, feels leaderless. Meanwhile, international eyes turn toward London. Foreign governments issue cautious statements urging stability and respect for democratic institutions. But intelligence insiders hint that this crisis has deeper layers, including references in William's dossier to undisclosed foreign coordination. What began as a domestic political scandal now teeters on the edge of becoming a global credibility crisis. Investors grow jittery, the pound dips, and journalists begin whispering about emergency meetings between the Bank of England and senior royals. In pubs, homes, and digital forums, one haunting question emerges again and again. Has Britain just witnessed the quiet beginning of a royal political comeback? For many, the thought is thrilling, the idea that the crown could once again act not as ornament, but as guardian. For others, it's terrifying, a step backward into an age where unelected power could eclipse democracy. Yet everyone agrees on one thing: nothing will ever be the same again. And as cameras capture the grey London sky over Buckingham Palace, a single phrase echoes through every newsroom, every street corner, and every private corridor of power. The crown has moved.